Joe, if you haven't seen this with Joe Biden, and you cannot sit here and tell me that this is not deliberately being done. I know it's easy to look at all this stuff with Biden and to say, wow, he's really incompetent. I look at the guy and my fists just start to clench too. Because, I mean, it's hard not to get caught up sometimes in this stuff when you see these leaders and they're bumbling fools. But you got to remind yourself that this is part of a show. And this whole thing with Biden and Kamala Harris, or whatever her name is so over the top obvious what they're trying to do. They are making them look incompetent. They're deliberately incompetent. They put incompetent people in there, but they're doing this on purpose. They're looking and coming across this way because they're leaving America vulnerable for attack, thus making it believable that America would be attacked. If somebody like Trump was in office, they would not be able to do the grid shutdown or other things that they have planned because Trump comes across as powerful and, a big bully and things like that. And stuff with Putin wouldn't go on. And that's not me supporting Donald Trump. I'm saying that's the role that he plays. That's his role in this, the big tough guy bully, whereas Biden is the incompetent fool. And to have the incompetent fool in office plays perfectly into a grid shutdown, into World War III, into America's, believing that it's actually going on and saying, oh, and then this, of course, will cause more friction between civilians of the left versus right. The right will blame people who voted for Biden and who are Democrats for the destruction of America, and they'll instead focus their attention on one another, which is what they want. That's divide and conquer, order out of chaos, instead of focusing on these actors and these puppets who have been put into office to destroy the United States of America. And that's exactly what is occurring. If you haven't seen this, Joe Biden is speaking with bullet points. Now, is that something that's completely uncommon? Probably not, but I mean, you would think that when I do my videos, I'm speaking. Once in a while I have bullet points, like if I do a music video or something and I have to remember all the crap that's in it. But I speak, and most of the time a president should be able to go up there and talk and not need bullet points. But they're doing this, and they're showing it to you, and somehow getting camera angles where they could read verbatim what's on his piece of paper, as if somebody in the White House isn't smart enough to say, oh, let's not let the cameraman get to a point where he could go behind the president and read what's on his paper. They want you to know that it's on the paper. They want you to know that he's got bullet points because he's incompetent, and they want you to know, hey, the White House has to tell him everything to say verbatim because he's losing his mind, he's out of control, and he doesn't know what he's doing. That's what they want. Take a look at this sheet of paper he's got. It's got bullet points on it, and then watch verbatim as he goes off of the bullet points.
I want to make it clear. I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies.
You do feel that Vladimir Putin should be removed from power? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was expressing just what I said. I was expressing the moral outrage I felt towards this man. I wasn't articulating a policy change.
So if you can't even tell me that this is not a show, and the problem is that people look at it and they're like, no, it's not. This guy's really a bumbling fool. I'm not saying the guy in real life isn't a bumbling fool. I personally don't even think he's a human being, to be honest. I don't even think this thing's alive. I think this thing gets plugged in at night. I mean, there's no human emotion. I mean, it's cringy as can be. But this would never be a story. This would never get out. 20 years ago, we still had Republicans and Democrats. We didn't have this, where it's just like it's my team, I'm a Republican, it's your team, you're a liberal, and you fight amongst each other, and it's all it is just a pointing a finger at each other over who they voted for, instead of holding any of these public officials accountable, who are supposed to be elected by us, working for us. They're all billionaires when they're supposed to be making, president's supposed to make $300,000 a year. These guys are billionaires. They have 50 homes, $1 million. Where do they get all their money? And people don't even ask questions like that. How does Obama have all this money? How does the Bushes have, They're like, they must have invested in good stocks. Oh, right. Because they're not really elected officials. And you don't give me the insider trading stuff. I mean, it's a charade. And this is just a perfect example of it. The problem is that people who are Republican buy into this. And it's easy to buy into it. It's easy to look at this and shake your head and go, oh my goodness, this is what we're dealing with. But you have to understand, the whole purpose of this is to set up the destruction of this country. And that's why I believe something will occur. And I'm not a prophet, and I haven't had visions, and this is clearly just me evaluating everything and guessing that something would likely occur before this man is removed from office. That doesn't mean that it'll be the grid shutdown, but I personally believe that is what will occur because the grid is vulnerable. This guy could bring us into World War III where postponed elections occur. Where in 2024, the liberals come out and they say we can't have an election because we're mid-war and everybody votes on it and blah, 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 right? The same thing I covered with Trudeau going on in Canada, where they came out and they said, hey, because of all the stuff with the 1-9er and everything, we're gonna cancel the 2022, pretty much I guess what would be considered Parliament's primary up there, and we're gonna keep the liberals in office. And there was no uproar about it. I mean, you'd think that'd be mainstream media news because they love the left-right divide, but I don't know. Maybe it was and I missed it. This right here, same thing. You have the same thing set up, whether it's before the primaries in 2022, because they've been doing a ton of predictive programming about that, about what's going to happen, and constantly just through repetition talking about it. I wouldn't be surprised if it is this year, but it might be a little bit too fast to get us into World War III by November, but who knows with this? I mean, they could do whatever they want at this point. Everybody believes everything the television says. They're emotionally invested in these characters. And that's really the best way to put it. They're emotionally invested in these characters, Trump and Biden, left and right. That they buy into whatever's said because, you see this stuff with a cheat sheet. And instead of going, how do they have access to it? How does the government even allow them to do that? And you don't think they have the power to get, to go to these news stations and stop some of this stuff that they do? They try to pretend like, they hate Fox News. They love Fox News. They love it because all this stuff does is divide the civilians. And if the civilians are divided, then nobody in Congress is going to be held accountable because the civilians are just going to take their energy out on one another. They're going to go out and see them in the streets protesting and fight amongst each other and tweet to each other and sit online and bitch to each other. That's what they want. So Biden once again referred to a cheat sheet as he doubled down on his unscripted weekend claim that Putin cannot remain in power. On Monday, Biden, who's 79, told reporters he made no apologies for his remarks, made off the cuff and not part of his prepared speech in a nationally televised address from Poland Saturday, and did not view it as a way to lure in Russia. It's more an aspiration than anything. He shouldn't be in power. So these are the bullet points. If you weren't advocating for regime change, I mean, look, the photo itself is just. I know we have the technology where someone could take a picture and they could see this stuff, but it's almost like he's holding it up to the camera so that the people could talk about this stuff and go back and forth. And like I said, this is all set up so it seems believable when they do this. And everyone is going to blame each other. And they're not going to blame these people. And that's the problem. That's why we are where we are. And that's how we're letting them walk us into a great reset. Because all this stuff, the left and the right and everyone, and then eventually everyone's going to be fried from it all after the grid goes down, and they're going to say, if we can all just, be on the same page, who cares about, we need to eat? I mean, they're going to just come in and save the day, big brother. And it'll be a new setup of Congress. It'll be a new government. All this stuff is going to be destroyed so they can bring in globalism and a new world order. Congress, as you know, it is not going to exist the way that it does. They don't need to keep putting on this illusion that every country's independent and every country isn't a globalist. They could just destroy all that. We have parliament, and then we have, a democracy here, and this there, and a republic in America. I mean, please, spare yourself this, from listening to their stupidity and buying into it. All the stuff you were taught in school about the Supreme Court and all this crap. So it's evil, it's bipartisan, and it's all bull crap. They are going to destroy the governments around the world, the countries around the world, and the civilians are the ones who are going to pay the price. The stuff in Ukraine has nothing to do with the actual government. It has to do with the civilians. They're the ones who end up losing everything. The governments are doing this together. So, yeah, you could feel sympathy for people who are involved, of course, because this is going to hit America at some point. And I'm telling you right now, when it hits America, don't run around, you shouldn't run around looking for sympathy or, because when it happens in America, if the grid is still up, the zombies will just be tweeting about what's going on instead of actually getting resources and preparing themselves for the worst, which is inevitably happening. But you got to make sure that you're aware of this stuff and you don't get sucked into this, because it couldn't be more obvious that it's staged. I mean, it's just headlines, talking, tough Putin, Q&A talking points. It makes him look like a complete buffoon. And yes, I know he looks like one, and I know he is one. But this is what they want. And this is just a set up failure. So if you weren't advocating for regime change, what did you mean? Can you clarify? I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the actions of this man. I was not articulating a change of policy. You heard him verbatim use the talking points. Well, it shouldn't surprise anyone anyway. Like I said, presidents do use talking points. They do have papers to read off of. I mean, that's part of giving a speech, right? They have teleprompters, these guys. All the presidents have had it. So it's not a shock, but that makes it look like he's reading like the ABC baby blocks. You know, like he's literally can't even form a sentence, which of course, I've said it before in videos. I mean, I can't believe that people buy into this, because you hear the guy talk. I mean, does he seem, he's senile, but that's done on purpose. And of course you say, well, why would they do it on purpose, Colin? I'm telling you, it's to make this country look vulnerable so that when they destroy it or begin the destruction of it, it won't surprise people. They'll go, oh, I knew it, that Biden, you know? People are already prepared in the back of their minds for the worst, and whether they want to admit it or not. Or people are like, oh, you're a fearmonger. Oh, yeah, I know in the back of their heads they're feeling that something could go down because they're watching this stuff, and your natural response to it is, this doesn't look good. But this is being done deliberately. That is my point. So the talking points, the charade, it's just constantly going on with the left and right. If people just pulled themselves out of it, we would have a chance for humanity. But unfortunately, they won't, and it's not going to happen. Like I've said, if you're new, and you're younger, I should say, politics were never like this. There was the left and the right, but I mean, there was, Republican versus Democrat. Nobody cared all that much because they realized that whoever really got put in on the other side was still going to be competent to a standpoint. I mean, you had Jimmy Carter, but other than him being completely incompetent, you had Clinton and Bush, and it was like, but I mean, all right, at least he, kind of can, he's a human being, he could talk, he could speak, he could do stuff. I don't agree with what he does in Congress, and I don't like his policies and all that stuff. That would be the common conversation, if any, about that stuff. But it would never be like looking at a president going, holy crap, we're about to go underwater. This place is about to get completely destroyed. The economy, the inflation, everything that we see going on. Tie it all. I mean, it's insane because it's deliberately done.